So least common multiple, a multiple of a whole number, is the product of the number and any non-zero whole number. Remember whole numbers, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, on up. So give multiples of 9. Well, we have to start it with 1. 9 times 1 is 9 times 2. So we're basically skip counting, right? 9 times 3. 9 times 4. 9 times 5. 9 times 6. 9 times 7. And these keep going on and on and on, right? Okay, so the next problem, you're going to find the least common multiple. Least common multiple is the smallest in the list of multiples. The problem that we have in doing things like this is we don't multiply right sometimes. How many of you are guilty of that? Yep. So we're going to do it the easier way. You can list the multiples of each number, but they're not going to be that easy. So what we're going to do is make factor trees for each one of them. Okay, so what is the prime factorization of 6? This is a toughie. Alex? 2 times 3. Circle them. 14 is 2 times 7. Now, to find the least common multiple, we do this exactly the same way when we start off greatest common factor. Do they share anything? Well, they share a 2. Mark it off, write it down. Multiply. Do they share anything else? No. That number would be the greatest common factor. Now we need the least common multiple. So you see any of the other factors that are left over, there's a 3 left over there and there's a 7 left over there. You put those on the list. 3 times 7. And then multiply them back together. 2 times 3 is times 7. What? 42. That would be your least common multiple. And the way you check that is 6 goes into 42, doesn't it? 14 goes into 42, doesn't it? So we know that's the least common multiple. So when we do this, do your factor trees for 4. That's 2 times 2, right? 15 is 3 times 5. And 5 is just 1 times 5, right? It's prime. Or you could just write 5, because 1's a factor of everything. There's one difference here. Remember in greatest common factor, they all had to share it, right? Least common multiple. If 2 of them share it, mark it off and write it down. Okay? Are there any shared factors? Nate? So we're going to mark off the 5, and write it down. Nothing else is shared, is it? Is it? So we have a 2 left over, a 2 left over, and a 3 left over. 1 doesn't really do anything, so we've got to write those down. Times 2, times 2, times 3. Do not leave it like this. Multiply it back together. I like to make it easy on myself. 5 times 2 is 10. 2 times 3 is 6. So what's my least common multiple? Okay, and remember, prime factorization of 8 is what? Sam?
2, 2, and 2.
Right. Give me the prime factorization of 18, Kobe. Everybody agree? Okay, least common multiple. What do they share? A 2. Mark it off, write it down. Do they share anything else? No, we've got a 2 left over here, a 2 left over here, a 3, and a 3. So put those on your list. Times 2, times 2, times 3, times 3. And what do you get when you multiply them all back together again? Jack?
72.
How many of you got 72? And ask yourself, does 8 go into 72? That multiple would be 8 times 9. Does 18 go into 72? That's 18 times 4. Now we get to the fun stuff. Woo, woo. So this is 2 times 3, right? Times x times y. And 16 is, what, 4 times 4, which is 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. Yes? Hello? Times x times x. That's not anything different. So least common multiple. We got to look at what they share. Well, looks like they share a 2, right? 2 and a 2. Mark it off, write it down. They share an x and an x. Write it down. They don't share anything else, though. So circle those that they don't share. And we're going to put all of those back onto the list. So we're going to put times 3 times y times 2 times 2 times 2 times x. And then all we do is multiply them out. Well, I'm going to do these. 2 times 2 times 2 is?
8.
And then 2 times 3 is? 6. 6 times 8 is? What? 48, correct? And then we have x times x, which is? X squared. And then we have a y. So it's 48x squared y. All right, how many of you got for 12x cubed y squared? You got 2 times 2 times 3 times x times x times x times y times y. And then the other one, you got 2 times 3 times 3 times x times x times y times y times y times z, correct? So, what do they share? What do they share? And what do they share?
They share a 3, a 2, 2 x's.
Wait a second. 2 and 2 x's.
Yeah,
Okay, what else?
and 2 y's.
Okay, then circle everything else that they have left in their lists and put them on there. So did you put another 2, another 3, another y, and another z? And another x? So what did you get for your least common multiple? So you come up with 36x cubed y cubed z. How many of you have that? That's so fun. I love that. Okay, next problem. Go ahead and write it down. So the question is, in which year? We're going to compare last year to this year, but we have to compare fractions. Last year, how many water skiers were there? No, that was the number of visitors. How many water skiers were there? Because we're talking about water skiers. Camden?
44,000.
44,000 out of 165,000. And I'm just going to put lat LY above it just to know that this is last year. This year, I'll put TY. That's not TY Hilton. That's this year. Okay? How many water skiers were there? 63,000 out of 180,000. We have to compare these. Well, you want to make your life a lot easier? Huh? Mark off these zeros and those zeros and those zeros and those zeros. So we're really comparing 44 over 165 to 63 over 180. Okay? Now we could get a common denominator, but who wants to do that? Not me either. What are we going to make? A heart. Aw, so pretty. Take 180 times 44, and I'll just pull up my calculator and we'll do that. So 180 times 44 is 7,920. And then we're going to take 165 times 63. And you get 10,395. So which fraction, how does this fraction compare to the second one? It is what? 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 44 over 165 is what compared? So it's less than. The question is, in which year was the fraction of water skiers greater? So what would your answer be, Sam?
This year.
This year. Does it matter if we make them all mixed numbers or we make them all improper? Does not matter. So this is 4 and 5/12. This is what? 4 and what? 1/9. What?
1/2.
And 33 over 8 is 4 and what? What is a common denominator between 12, 2, and 8? Well, so what do they share? A 2, a 2, a 2. Mark it off, write it down. It can be shared in more than in just 2 of them. Maria said they share another 2, right? What's left over? 3 and a 2. Okay, so the least common multiple is 24, which means that's the least common denominator. So make this 4 and how many 24ths? 12 times what's 24?
2.
So 5 times 2 is?
10.
That's 4 and how many 24ths? 2 times 12 is 24, so 1 times 12? This is 4 and how many 24ths? 8 times what is 24? So 1 times 3 is? Least to greatest. Well, obviously that one's the smallest, right? Write it back in its original form. So we're going to put 33 over 8. That one's done. Then what? Christian?
53 over 12.
How many of you get 4 and 5/12? Right? Because that one's next. And then the biggest one is 9 over 2. Everybody agree?
No.